And then there were four. Well, that's in 12 different brackets in the UIL classifications. Nonetheless, I'm Will Turbo. That is Ella Hestand, and we've just got a couple more weeks of Texas high school football. And boy, did we have a good one last week, did we, Ella?
Definitely. There were some great games, some very close games, and it was overall just a really good week for Texas high school football playoffs.
Yeah, and we'll kind of jump right into it. Usually we focus on the Houston games, but now that we're getting down to these last few teams, seems like we might as well go, where the biggest storylines are. And it was over there at UNT, Allen and Southlake Carroll. This is on paper one of the biggest matchups that you can see in the nation. Two storied programs, and Southlake Carroll took care of business 47-21. Riley Dodge fed Owen Allen quite a bit, 30 carries, 144 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And that guy, quarterback, Caden Anderson, has proved to be a little bit more than reliable. He's proved to be a little bit more than, he's the replacement. He has a 90.8 QBR. They put 47 points up. He only had a touchdown. That proves how dynamic this offense is. Does Carroll have the best player left in 6A D1 with Owen Allen?
I don't know if I would go so far as to say the best player, but he does have insane single season stats for running back with over 2,000 rushing yards. But I think he's definitely probably the best rusher left in 6A D1, and I don't think anyone would necessarily dispute that. But I think there's a lot of really great other offensive weapons and some great players on defense that could also vie for that title.
Yeah, you want to talk about the defensive players left in this. You've got Amari Abor from Duncanville. You've got Tay Leonard, Chris Ross, Denver Harris, all from North Shore. Caleb Burton plays wide receiver for Lake Travis. So there's still a whole lot of star power left. And that, when we were talking about Southlake Carroll, it's not exactly the star power that we would have thought of about 6 months ago. And, it's in the news right now, so we might as well talk about it, Ella. Quinn Ewers is in the transfer portal. It's not a rumor anymore. He's there. He's visited Texas Tech. I believe he is talking to the staff at TCU. He's already had a home visit with Sark. Ella, where do you see Quinn Ewers in 2022?
I definitely see him coming back to Texas. I think that might be a no-brainer for him, but it's really a toss-up where he's going to end up. I think right now, I'm thinking probably Texas. I think Sark really wants him, especially after the kind of disappointing season Texas just had. I think Ewers would be a really good addition to that team. So it would not surprise me if we saw a commitment to Texas sometime soon.
Yeah, I'm going to say that Texas is probably the front runner right now. If you remember, that's where Ewers was originally committed before, flipping to go to Ohio State. So that's in the mix. If Joey McGuire can pull this off at Texas Tech, I've already said this probably 10 times over the last few days. They might as well build a statue of him before he even coaches a game there. That would just be the biggest, surprise. You could mark it off my bingo list that Ewers would even transfer. But we saw the year that CJ Stroud had. It was probably going to take a while for him to get some playing time. But he will be a big name in college football next year, maybe the biggest. He's already made over $1 million and has only played 2 snaps, hasn't thrown a pass. So that's one thing. We talked about Riley Dodge's game. Now let's talk about the original coach Dodge over there at Westlake. He won 70-7 over at DKR. I was at this game. They beat Vandergrift. Vandergrift was very good this year. Jack Kaiser, he's a sophomore. He came in the middle of the year for Westlake, and he had 140 yards and 6 touchdowns in this game. Most of that was in the first half. And even though they put up 70, Cade Klubnik didn't have any passing touchdowns. They ran it a lot. He had 1 rushing touchdown, but they would get down near the goal line and hand it off every single time. Will this madness finally end when they play Katy this weekend?
I think so. It definitely has been fun to hear about and fun to watch for you. But I think Katy's got a very solid defense that will not allow Kaiser to run all over them. And it will definitely force Klubnik to start passing the ball, which is not a bad thing because he has a cannon for an arm. But and several stud receivers, including, Jaden Greathouse, who has almost 1,000 receiving yards this season. And they've got a very stellar offense, but I think Katy also has a very stellar defense. And it'll be really interesting to see how those two kind of play off of each other and how much Westlake is able to get away with in this game.
Yeah, 70 is a good, benchmark in the region finals. So even if they get half of that, that would be more than enough. I mean, we've seen Katy's offense this year, but putting 35 is quite a bit. Are both of these teams more impressive than what we saw last year? Because now we're seeing the two teams that won 6A championships, and they both went undefeated. Or Katy lost that one game against Tompkins, but they both had really dominant seasons. Are they better than they were last year somehow?
I think there might be a good chance they are, and I think we'll definitely see more of that in the last two games. Because, personally, I haven't had much to see of either of these teams, but I've definitely seen the stats and I've definitely seen the hype. And I think they're at least where they were last year. And I think that they have the potential to continue to be even better. And I think it'll really start to come out for both teams in this game and whichever one makes it to state, because I think this is one of the toughest games that these teams are going to end up playing all season, as it normally would be. And it's really going to start revealing a lot about the talent and structure and progress these teams have made throughout the entire season.
Yeah, this is no disrespect to Denton Geyer and Tomball, but I truly believe that this is the 6A D2 championship game. I mean, these are two of the best teams, not only in the state, but in the entire nation. I believe they're both top 10 according to Max Preps. So this is going to be a great matchup. They're playing neutral site. I mean, last year, Westlake decided to come into town and play North Shore. They won that game. They're going to be at McLean Stadium in Waco for that. So that'll be something to watch. And on the other side of the 6A D2 bracket, Tomball did it again. I think we're saying this every single week. They beat a Connor Wigman-less Bridgeland. He didn't play. He got hurt against Cedar Hill. The game was 48-13. We thought this was going to be a close game either way if Wigman played. Cale Helms, 111 yards in the air, 163 on the ground, 5 combined touchdowns. So they're going to play Geyer this coming week. I'm going to start off with a question about Bridgeland, because now we've seen officially the last game of Connor Wigman's high school career was against Cedar Hill in the region semifinals. Based on what you saw from Bridgeland this year and what we didn't see in the weeks that he didn't play, was Connor Wigman the most valuable player in Texas high school football this year?
I think he was definitely the player that made that Bridgeland team, and he ran that team like his own. And I think a lot of that team's success can be contributed to him, which makes him a very valuable player to that team. And considering that they were one of the best teams in at least the Houston area, I think that makes him a very valuable player overall. And we saw how they did without him, and it was nothing like the Bridgeland that we'd seen all season. And that it correlates perfectly with Wigman's absence. And so I think that his presence on that team was the deciding factor for them, which makes him one of the most valuable players in probably all of Texas.
Yeah, it really switched. And we talked about it before the playoffs started, how Bridgeland looked like one of the toughest teams in the state, that maybe they were going to be a true contender. And they went up all the way to the region finals, despite him missing more than a couple games. But when you look at the difference, I mean, they lost to teams that really had no business beating them late in the regular season. We saw they dropped a couple, and then Tomball here. I don't think that's fair to say that Tomball is a team that shouldn't beat him, because Tomball is on this incredible run right now. But Connor Wigman, what an incredible career. He's about to do great things over there in College Station. So we wish him all of the best. Now we head over to Tomball. I said that wasn't fair to say that Tomball isn't a team that should have beat them, because I think that Tomball has some crazy amount of momentum. Ella, do they have more momentum than any team left in the playoffs, regardless of classification?
I think so. This team is riding on so much right now. They are winning every game, and most of them are not even close. And this Tomball team kind of came out of nowhere because they barely made the playoffs. but then have continued to dominate throughout the playoffs. And they have so much momentum going right now. And I feel like it's partially because they're not one of those traditionally winning teams that ends up this deep into the playoffs. This isn't necessarily like a normal occurrence like it would be for the other side of this bracket, like Katy and Westlake. Like they're used to this spot, and Tomball is not necessarily. And I think they're really using that, being like, we can be the team that makes to a state championship. And I think they really want that for themselves. And they've got a lot of momentum riding with them right now. And there's a lot of hype behind them. And I think that they're just going to continue to ride it more than any team that's left.
Yeah, well, I've got a kind of crazy stat for you right here. Tomball has now won more playoff games than they did district games. They were 3-3 in district, and now they're headed to the state semifinals. So that's something. And in back-to-back weeks, they beat Bridgeland and Rockwall Heath. They've had a really tough path. This is not, we said this region was kind of all over the place, but Tomball's beaten the favorites every single week. Oh, this is the team that's going to make it. Once you get down to Bridgeland, it's going to be either one of those. But Rockwall Heath, that's the team. Well, now that Cy Park's out, Rockwall Heath will win it. They take out Rockwall Heath. Go back to the first round. They take out Cy Park. So this Tomball team has not only just, they haven't glided through and beat the weak opponents to get here. They have beaten the absolute toughest teams in this region. Now you've got to go against that DFW region, so maybe not as easy, but they have not had, easy is not in their definition right now. They've played some really tough football, and this Tomball Geyer game is going to be really hard to pick in just a few minutes. And now we go back over to 6A D1, where Lake Travis is a state semifinalist. They're playing North Shore this week, and to be honest, I don't think we've mentioned Lake Travis all year. Like I said, we talk about Houston quite a bit, but this is a storied program. This is a team that at one point very recently was thought of as a state contender every single year. They lost in the first round, crazy COVID year. They're outscoring their playoff opponents 181-57. And that was including beating San Antonio Brennan last week. They were undefeated coming into that game. The main storyline of this Lake Travis team coming into the playoffs was that they gave up 63 points to Westlake in the last week of the season. So they had a loss, not the momentum that they wanted. Not that anyone was, really expecting them to win that game, but they were on a down. So based on what we've seen, based on those scores, based on the stats, is Lake Travis a legitimate threat to beat North Shore here?
I think that they might be. It's definitely North Shore's toughest game since they played Westfield, and they haven't really had to play at the caliber that I think Lake Travis has been on throughout playoffs and throughout districts, but they've definitely had some tough games, especially, against Tascasita. North Shore has, but Lake Travis has already played one of the best teams in Texas in Westlake, and even though they lost, that's a learning loss. And I think that they've got a good shot at beating this North Shore team, but North Shore is one of the best teams in Texas, obviously, and they are used to making it to that state championship game, and I think they really want it this year. But if anything's going to happen, anything can happen when a trip to AT&T Stadium is on the line, and I think Lake Travis really wants to make it to that game, and they could definitely take out North Shore if they wanted it enough.
Well, I think both these teams won it quite a bit. So you look at Lake Travis early in the season, they drop a game to Rockwall 59-35. Rockwall's not even a team we've been talking about in the last few weeks. So they've scored a lot, but they've given up a lot of points. And we really saw that all through district. They were giving up points late in games, with reserves in, and then 63 to Westlake. So I think that, as young as this North Shore offense is, they're going to have to, Lake Travis is going to have to spend a whole lot of time on defense, how they're going to contain them from the start, because we've seen already that once North Shore gets hot, they don't stop. The only game they lost is because they didn't start off hot, and they haven't done anything like that since the Westfield game. So Ella, is Lake Travis the least likely team to win 6A D1 now that we're down to 4?
Absolutely no disrespect to Lake Travis by any means. but you've got South Lake Carroll, Duncanville, and North Shore are the other 3 teams in those Final Four, and those are some phenomenal teams with stacked offenses and defenses. And I think Lake Travis is definitely the underdog out of those 4. I think most people would probably expect North Shore to go on out of their pairing. And I think if you even put Lake Travis up against either South Lake Carroll or Duncanville, I don't know if they can pull that one out, but it's definitely a very tough Final Four. And I think that they deserve their spot there. But I think out of those 4, I would probably pick them as the least likely to win that state championship.
Yeah, if you remember the playoffs last year, it was 3 out of the same 4 teams in 6A D1. The one that was different is Westlake, and they're in D2 this year. So we see these, 3 teams, Duncanville, South Lake Carroll, and North Shore, just consistently win their regions and, battle it out for a chance to go to AT&T Stadium. And Lake Travis has not been that team in the last couple of years. So yes, I see them as the least likely, but I also think they surpassed my expectations, and they surpassed a lot of people's expectations after a down year last year. So we'll see how that turns out. Ella, there's only 4 games to pick this week. We're picking the 6A D1 and 6A D2 matchups. So let's start it off with Lake Travis and North Shore.
I picked against North Shore last week, just, in hopes for Tascasita to pull out that win after their great season. And I don't think I'm going to make the same mistake this week. Lake Travis is a great team, but I think North Shore is better. And I think North Shore makes it to that state championship game. And they've got a lot of energy. That team is really fun to watch. And I think they're going to win this game.
You know what I say every time we talk about North Shore? They're starting a freshman at quarterback. He's a freshman. They brought him in midway through the season, and they just beat Atascocita, who had one of the best all-around teams in the state. I think North Shore wins this game, but it may be, their second biggest challenge of the postseason behind Atascocita, and it may be even closer than that. How about Duncanville and South Lake Carroll?
I think when you look at Caden Anderson and Owen Allen, what they've been doing for the South Lake Carroll team, they have a very, very good offense. And I think Duncanville is a very respectable team. They're a very good team. They took down a great DeSoto team. But Carroll took down Allen, and they've just got a lot going for them right now. And I think that with AT&T Stadium on the line, I think they're going to pull out the win.
As much as I would love to see North Shore and Duncanville a couple years later after that crazy Hail Mary ending with Demetrius Davis, I think South Lake Carroll wins this one. They prove us wrong, who said that they would take a step back. So, congratulations to you, Coach Dodge, and Caden Anderson, especially, who came in to the limelight once Quinn Ewers left. And I know he's probably ready to stop hearing that name. So I'm taking South Lake Carroll in this one. Sets us up for what would be a great North Shore South Lake Carroll 6A D1 championship. And now we head over to D2, where we've got Tomball and Denton Geyer.
So here's my I wouldn't say controversial, but here's my take on it. I think Geyer is the better team, but I think Tomball has more momentum and energy and hype behind them going into this game. And I think that's a very big factor in winning football games. You don't always need the top tier talent. You need to have the most grit and energy behind your run. And I think Tomball has that over Geyer right now. So at this very moment, I'm taking Tomball.
See, when I was making this pick, I really looked at last week's games. And I saw that Denton Geyer had to come back to beat Prosper. And that game was really split. Not a lot of people were sure who was going to take that region. Geyer pulls it out for yet another year. On the other side, Tomball plays Bridgeland, who is weakened, who has injuries. So I think that this is the week that unfortunately the Tomball story ends and Denton Geyer wins it, but not the same Tomball. Ashton's not on here this week. It wasn't the same Tomball this week. So I'm officially taking Denton Geyer. And now we have the granddaddy of them all, maybe the best game, the 2 best teams in the state of Texas, Westlake and Katy.
I'm really excited for this game because I think it's going to be very close and it's going to be very intense and everyone's going to be on the edge of their seat. But I think when you look at Westlake's just weapons, they've got Klubnik, Kaiser, Great House, and then a big defense with, Will Courtney, Carter Barksdale, Luke Aaron. They might be able to shut down Koger and Seth Davis, and which are Katy's two biggest threats, I think. And if they can do that, I think Westlake has this game.
If there's any team in the state of Texas that's going to challenge Westlake, it'll be Katy. Katy's got the experience. Koger is starting for a second year. Like this is not things that juniors do. He's got another chance to go to the state championship as a junior. So props to him. But I talked to a couple of these Westlake guys after the game on Saturday, and I've talked to them, early this week. They're excited for this game, but they're just treating it like every other week. They're not making too big of a deal out of it. They're saying we've won before and we're going to win again. So I will trust them. I will trust Cade Klubnik. I'll trust all those guys. I'm going to take Westlake in this one. So we were split on one game. So we'll be back next week to see who got that one right. And that'll be the last show of the Texas high school football season. It's gone by so fast, Ella, hasn't it?
Definitely. It seems like just yesterday we were filming that first episode and coming back for season 2. And it's been a great football season. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been a great year. Well, make sure you tune in next week where we'll be able to preview not only 6A games, but some other classifications as well. For Ella Heston, I am Will Turboff. No Ashton Lux this week. Hopefully we'll be back next week. Thanks for joining. We'll see you soon.